Okay, so welcome. Right now, we are going to be learning about the topic of having a rabbinic attorney in a Beis Din and giving legal advice. We are very privileged today to have Rabbi Cohen, who's the head shliach of Sacramento, and he's from my understanding, he's a very big Rav in the whole Northern California area, and it's a very big privilege for him to be able to give us a little bit of a class today. And let's do share screens right now so that Rabbi, you'll be able to, if you want, you can share from the screens in the back. Let's say, okay, Rabbi, can we have you take it from here and tell us about what the class is going to be for today? So what is it? I'm asking you, is it working? Is there a way? Okay, good.
What we're gonna, you hear me now?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
What we're gonna discuss today is about the idea of a Jewish lawyer in a Beis Din. You learned in 26. One second, I think I better move outside. There'll be some less noise.
Sure.
Bear with me 1 second. 1 second.
Sure. No worries. Yes, in Sif 26, the Alter Rebbe, where, right. I have here some backgrounds also, if you need, just in case. I have the Rambam on the, whatever you want.
You see me here?
Yes, let's continue with.
Let me get my books. I'm starting in 1 second.
Sure. 1 second. So we have a few sources just in case if the rabbi wants to reference to them. He'll have them here as well available. Let me just know what I'm doing. Okay. Yeah, so last week we did speak about the topic of rabbinic attorneys, and we left a few things unclear. There was a lot of cloud on the topic. Is it okay or is it not okay? And what is the Alter Rebbe talking about when he seems to frown upon the idea? Maybe this that he's frowning upon rabbinic attorneys, he's not necessarily referring to what's going on today, because rabbinic attorneys are very popular. But maybe what is being done today is also a problem. So that is hopefully what we will get some clarity on this topic. Rabbi, can I start off with a question for you?
Sure, please.
When we read the Alter Rebbe Sif Chavav, it just seems Alter Rebbe gives no heter whatsoever to have a rabbinic attorney, provided that you can show up yourself. That's what it seems, or it's just not proper. He really frowns upon the topic. Could it be that what the Alter Rebbe was talking about is different than today's Batei Din, where they have a very big industry for rabbinic attorneys? Is it a different, or it's the same, and it's also should be frowned upon?
You cannot frown upon something that it's done in courts. Meaning, since there are many Batei Dinim that have toyanim, and it's a whole industry, the toyanim, the lawyers, make a lot more money than the rabbis. And you cannot say that it's not correct, because even though, before we go into the subject, when you have two people in a room, raw people, two people against each other, it's much easier to make peace, or to them to come to a compromise or to an understanding. And when you have two hired bulldogs, it's very difficult. So it's definitely a better practice to have the two people come raw before the Din Torah, and whatever the rabbi said, that's the will of the God. So that's definitely better. But let's first understand why it's not good to have an attorney. The Alter Rebbe in the 26th part that you studied says, he brings a passage from Yecheskel. What's a terrible thing to do? To be a murshe. A murshe is someone that he buys the case and it becomes his case. If he wins, he loses, he becomes the fighter. It becomes his case. If you learn, the Alter Rebbe says, at the end of 26, he says you need to write up a proper shtar, a proper document where you sell your case to somebody else. A toyen is not coming there. It doesn't become his case. He's standing with you. You're with him. You're not sitting at home and saying, you fight, see what you can kick out of this one. That's not a mursha. Here you're coming to court and you're there and he is speaking on your behalf. You could correct him. He is advising you. It's different than a mursha, what the Alter Rebbe is speaking about in Sif, in the 26th chapter. However, there's a Mishnah, the Alter Rebbe says that if you have a difficult case or it's hard for the person to travel and get his money, then you're doing a mitzvah. Then it's a good thing to be even a murshe, even someone who buys the case. But the Alter Rebbe doesn't say what many commentaries say, that if he's a difficult person, you're also allowed to help him. Because the Shach says that it's okay, because if it's a difficult person and the person wouldn't be able to do it on his own, it's also a mitzvah to help him. The Alter Rebbe doesn't say that because he feels that a mursha is not a good thing. However, it says the Mishnah in Pirkei Avos, which you so kindly put on the screen, that Yehuda ben Tabai and Shimon ben Shotach say, Yehuda ben Tabai says, do not be like a lawyer. What does this mean, to not be like a lawyer? Al ta'as atzmo ke'erchi adayonin. So you cannot say that pshat in the Mishnah in Pirkei Avos, the meaning in the Mishnah in Pirkei Avos is that you shouldn't be a lawyer and say false things in the court and try to make them crazy to make a judgment. Al ta'as atzmo ke'erchi adayonin cannot mean that, because Pirkei Avot is not talking about people that are crooks, because that's the halacha. And for sure, you're not allowed to do that. Pirkei Avot, it says in the Gemara, in Baba Kama, I think it's page 30, and the Rebbe would quote it often whenever he explained Shabbos Pirkei Avos, that Pirkei Avos is milsa de Chasidusa, beyond the letter of the law. So you cannot say that the meaning of Pirkei Avos is not to be a crook. So therefore, the Rambam and Rabbeinu Yoina, which you bring in you're posting on the board, they learn pshat. What does it mean? Al ta'as atzmecha ke'erchi adayonim. They learn it means simply that. According to the Rambam and Rabbeinu Yoina, you're not allowed to have an attorney helping you what to say. Because that's what the Rambam says. The Rambam says that a person could not tell him, say this, don't say that. Even though you know the other guy is lying. Even though you need to help him, you shouldn't do that. But this is a very big question. Why can't you help him? The judge can't help him. This we learn many times. The judge is supposed to only listen to what he's saying and rule. He shouldn't help one side and give him, maybe say that, maybe say that. That he for sure can do. And you also can't say that that's pshat in the Mishnah. Al ta'as atzmecha ke'erchi adayonin, that the judge shouldn't help the plaintiff or the defendant say what they should say. You can't say that that's pshat in the Mishnah, Because again, that's not Mila de Chasidusa. That's not beyond the letter of law. That's the law. A judge can't help the defendant. He just said, what do you plead, my friend? So therefore, it's understood why the Rambam and Rabbeinu Yoina learn Pshat in the Mishnah in Pirkei Avos. The meaning of the Mishnah means don't help him what to say. The question on the Rambam and Rabbeinu Yoina is as follows. This idea of the Mishnah that says, we're going to learn in this Shabbos, the first chapter, Mishnah 8, is brought down twice into the Gemara in Ksubas. So again, what we have so far, I just want to take note. We have so far the Rambam and Rabbeinu Yoina that say that you cannot be Erchi Adayoni, you can't help him what to say. However, we have to take a look a little in the Gemara in Ksubas and see where this Mishnah is brought. It's brought down twice in the Gemara in Ksubas. It's brought down on page 52. The first case. What's the case? The Rambam says, the Talmud says on page 52, that if there's a widow, so once her husband dies, she has a choice. Either she could take her ksuba, whatever the ksuba is, 20,000, 10,000, 15,000, 50,000, and she walks, or she gets the possibility of being taken care of for life. She gets taken care of. How about if she gets sick? So there's an interesting thing that we have to understand. But if it's a regular doctor's visit that she has once, twice, 3 times, 10 times a year, it's called refuah she'ein lo kitzva. Then they have to pay it. It's like food. The Yesomim, the orphans, have to pay it from the estate. But if she gets a big swapping bill, that's clearly a refuah sheyesh lo kitzva. The doctor says it's not something that we don't know what it's going to cost. We know clearly it's going to be $25,000. Then the Yesomim are not obligated to pay her for the rest of her life. That's her ksuba. Bingo. Says the Gemara. An interesting question. Rabbi Yochanan had relatives, and they had to take care of their father's widow. And every day she went to the doctor. Now they were stuck. They had to pay for her doctor every day, and they also had to take care of her, nothing doing. Came Rabbi Yochanan, and he told them, I have a vicious plan for you. Tell the doctor that he'll take care of her for the rest of her life for the fee of $50,000. So then it becomes a refuah sheyesh lo kitzva. So since it's a refuah sheyesh lo kitzva, once they pay that, there's no meksuba, and she's on her own. Rabbi Yochanan said, not nice. I transgressed on the Mishnah in Pirkei Avos. The Mishnah in Pirkei Avos says that you should not tell people what to say in a court. Asks the Gemara, what was Rabbi Yochanan thinking when he told them this advice? He knew the Mishnah in Pirkei Avos. Says the Gemara, Rabbi Yochanan thought, I'm allowed to do it because it's my relative. Since it's my relative, it's like my court case. I can't go to a stranger What are you mixing in? She's having a good life. They're paying for it. They have to pay for it. Why are you getting involved? But he felt like it was his. So then the prohibition of the Mishnah of Altas Atzmcha K'orchi Adayonin doesn't apply. So the Talmud asks, so why was he upset at himself that he transgressed the Mishnah? So the Talmud answers, he thought that even though he's in the right, nevertheless, since he's a Odom Choshuv, since he's a important person, people will learn from him to give advice in court cases. When you look at this case, you see it wasn't just regular advice, what to say, what not to say, how to say what they want to say. It was a certain trick. So many people that argue with the Rambam say that the first part of Erchei Adayonin, when the Mishnah says in Pirkei Oves, not to be like Erchei Adayonin, he's only talking a trick, like Rabbi Yochanan with his relatives. But it's definitely clear from the Rambam and Rabbeinu Yoina that you cannot even tell him what to do regularly. But the question on the Rambam and Rabbeinu Yoina is, in the Gemara in Subes 52, it seems, you can only tell them a trick, but a regular thing you could. And if you actually look in the Tosfos Yom Tov on the Mishnah of Pirkei Avos, he brings from the name of Rabbi Matisyo the Yitzhari that that's what the Mishnah means, only a trick. And if you look in the holy Rabbi Vadia Bar Tanura, he doesn't say, tell him what to say. He says, V'loi ma'aloi aseikach, make such a trick. But otherwise, you're allowed to have someone tell you how to say your complaints. One more case in Ksubis.
So what, Rabbi? Let me ask you a quick thing. So according to the way the mainstream approach of how the commentators understand the Mishnah, also from Ksubis, is that if you even tell them their halachic rights, but because they're not Talmidei Chachamim and they don't know this, but a person like Rabbi Yochanan knew it, it's also wrong. So that means that is that therefore wrong to teach their halachic rights?
If you tell them what they should say, it's okay. If you make a trick and try to outsmart and go like this crazy thing about getting a doctor to make a new bill, a new invoice, even though it's not a lie, only that you can do. Because, the halacha is that since she's going to the doctor every day, they have to pay. But a regular thing, how to say what happened and what didn't happen, that you could, according to the other commentaries. Am I making sense? You could,
yes.
The question is, most Toyanim don't just say, they also make tricks. So if they make tricks, then according to everyone, they shouldn't be that way.
Right.
But we're going to get to the final answer in just a little bit. I want to go over one more case. Do we have time for one more case? Super,
Sure. Yeah, of course.
The Gemara says in Ksubis, also page 85b, Rav Nachman had a relative. She was a lady, and she had a ksuba, let's say, for $1 million. She sold it for $50,000. What happens when she gets divorced?
What usually happens in those cases? They don't
in
want
those
to pay.
cases, the people that bought the ksuba, they get the $1 million for the $50,000 that they paid. It's like they're buying futures. She got divorced. And she was going to inherit $1 million. She died. So the people that bought the ksuba came to her daughter and said, listen, give us the $1 million. So Rav Nachman said, if she was smart, she would tell her father, keep the ksuba. She had the right to forgive the ksuba. So these people who paid $50,000 get nothing. She could forgive it. A lot of commentaries say she had to give them back the $50,000 they put down. But could she forgive? She could forgive it. And then she'll get the whole $1 million when her father passes away. Which is brilliant. So Rav Nachman said here, I'm also transgressing the Mishnah in Pirkei Avos of making myself like Erchi Adayon.
We pause for a second. Having lawyers and having, Rabbi, you want to continue?
Sorry,
please?
my phone overheated.
Oh, that happens. It happens all the time.
Okay, listen.
Yeah.
What were you saying? Or should I just continue?
Just continue. I think that would be better.
Listen. So Rav Nachman had a trick to tell them to forgive the ksuba, and by forgiving the ksuba, she would later, when her father passes, inherit the whole $1 million and give these guys their $50,000 that they paid. So Rav Nachman had the same thing. Rav Nachman said he thought he was allowed to because it's his relative and he could make her $1 million by being smart, paying $50,000. And then he realized that he's an Odom Choshuv. Since he's an important person, people may learn from him, he shouldn't do it. When you look at these two Gemaras, you see that you cannot be me'eichi adayonin, you cannot help only in a way that it's a trick. But if it's not a trick, you're allowed to. Not like the Rambam and not like Rabbeinu Yonah. But most Toyanim today are not just there telling you what to say and how to present yourself. They're telling you different angles and they come up with all. That's why they're paid the big bucks. So even if you don't rule like the Rambam and Rabbeinu Yonah, you still shouldn't have these lawyers because they are making finagling different shtick of what to do, what to put the money, not just telling you how to present yourself. Now, if it's talking about a relative, then you could do it, because if you're not an Odom Choshuv, the question is like this. Is this halacha or is this lifnim meshuras adin? Meaning, when the Mishnah says you're not allowed to do it, is it telling you if you want to be beyond the letter of the law? Like I spoke to someone today, he had a court case, and he thought he lost $75,000 wrong. And he felt that he wants to see invoices, and they wouldn't let him. It was the whole to-do. I told him, listen, you went to court. That's what they ruled. You signed a paper before you went to court. You're going to do what the court says. That's the will of God. The will of God is that a Jew should go to Beis Din and accept what the Beis Din says. I saw a beautiful letter from the Rebbe. The Rebbe says when you go to court and each side chooses a rabbi and they choose a third rabbi, what they rule, that's the will of God. So you got to listen. There's a story with the Baal Shem Tov that they came to him. They were two good friends. And one of them gave his friend a pikodin, he asked him to watch $1 million. All our stories today are only $1 million and up. I'm kidding. So he asked him to watch $1 million. But it was very good friends, so he had no paper between them. So they came to court, and the rabbis ruled, no paper, no money. You can't just take money from people. You need proof. So the Hasidim came to Baal Shem Tov and told the Baal Shem Tov, listen, this is not fair. We know these orphans, all of a sudden they're driving these nice cars, they never had money, and they're living off his $1 million. How could the court say something like this? So the Baal Shem Tov told them, listen, there's emes and emes la'amite. There's truth and the ultimate truth. The truth is, you guys are right, probably he gave his friend $1 million. But the ultimate truth is that in a previous lifetime, his friend gave him $1 million and he kept it. So they came back here. So the Din Torah is very, very, very powerful. You're doing God's will. So you shouldn't need any toyanim. You should just stand and say your story. What happens, happens. The question is, could we take away from a person his rights? If it's only milsa de chasidusa, so we tell him, you go and do your thing. And the ultimate is to listen to the Rambam and Rabbeinu Yoina. It's mashma from the, like Rabbi Bressman said from the Alter Rebbe, that a mursha is a bad thing unless it's impossible. Otherwise, he's stuck. Because they're very difficult people and they live in different places and you can't travel there. You'll just lose your money. But otherwise, you should just go raw before a bestin. And I've discussed this with Rabbi Yaroslavsky, the head of the Chabad court in Israel. He's begging and pleading, don't have lawyers. They distort it and they say lies and stories and it becomes such a bulldog fight. And it's a match who could say something better, because you better say something good because he was paid $3,000 an hour. Some take such amazing amounts of money. But the question is, if it's only milsa de chasidusa, then the court can't take that right away. They can't tell you what's the difference between the letter of the law and beyond the letter of the law. Beyond the letter of the law is something that you should do. The letter of the law is something that the Beis Din could obligate you. So this is the quandary about Toyin Rabboni, and therefore I really want to bless all the Beis Dins that don't let Toyin Rabboni. The couple Din Toiris that I sat on came to still and an argument and difficult because of the Toyanim were screaming. It's not pleasant and it doesn't bring anything good. The question is, and Rabbi Bressman shared with me that the certain Bati Dinim in New York don't allow Toyanim.
Based in America, they used to, and I think one of the Toyanim disagreed with their Dayanim, and he started. They felt it was very disrespectful, and they saw case after case of where just bad experiences with certain people. So they said you can bring lawyers, but you can't bring Toyanim. Now I don't know if lawyers is any better, but they apparently feel that lawyers have a license, and they can get in trouble if they play foul play. Whereas Toyanim in America have no one on top of them, and they're not afraid to do anything. There's ethical license to lawyers, apparently. That's what they say. Whether, I don't know if you agree with that or not, but
yeah. Again, it's. I remember I was on the Din Torah, and the Toyanim would call me day and night, and I told them I can't really speak to you. This is wrong. This is wrong.
Excommunication, party excommunication, right?
You can't do that.
Right.
Anyways, what I want to say, but like I said in the beginning of the class, according to the Shach and the Ramah, which the Alter Rebbe doesn't quote, and the Imre Yaakov asks, why doesn't the Alter Rebbe quote the Shach and the Ramah that say that even in the same city, if he's a difficult guy, you could have a toyah? You see, the Alter Rebbe is machmir. Could be paskins like the Rambam and Rabbeinu Yoina, that just to have it, it's not authentic. It's not proper. But those boti dinim that do allow toyanim, we must say that they hold that the Pirkei Avos is beyond the letter of the law, and we can't take the right away from the people. That's what we must say.
Interesting.
Going one more point, I remember dealing in a dintera, and one of the sides says, they brought what the Alter Rebbe says, you can't, you could be, a mursha is not good, asher loy toivos, it's not good. It doesn't say it's prohibited. It says it's not good.
Yeah.
But they bring down that the nitva, the one who, if you're claiming something from someone, that person can't have a mursha. So they said, no toyin for the guy who you're claiming. I told them, you guys are wrong. It says that the one who, the loive, the borrower can't have a mursha. He has to stand in court and he has to lie and say, I didn't take the money from you. If he has a bulldog saying it for him and he's not in court, then it's a problem. If you look in the 24th Siman in Chesher Mishpat. But if he's there together with a toyin, it's not prohibited. Bottom line, better, like Rabbi Bressman said, not to have a toyin. It causes all the dentators to go sour, and it just becomes a matching. It doesn't become for people trying to work it out and live together and listening to God's will the way a tater should be.
Rabbi, I wanted to conclude with one sad story, but you just
Please.
understand how severe the matter is. So there's I know someone from New York. I don't know him, but apparently someone from New York contacted me about, it was a divorce case. So I eventually called the wife because she was initiating the divorce to try to just speak to her. And you have to be very careful because, you know, there's some legal issues that you have to be very careful. So I spoke to her and she told me, and again, maybe she wasn't supposed to tell me this, but she said to me, she says, I can't make peace with my husband. I said, why not? And afterwards, I think she quickly was very careful to go back. She says, because I have a free lawyer and the lawyers will not agree to do a free service for me, for a woman who, if they are willing to make somewhat peace with the husband. Then they drop the case, and she's afraid that she'll lose her free lawyer. So she has to, out of sof, like a true milchama. Now, I know we were talking about Tony Rabbanim, and this is about...
But it's very similar what you're saying.
They have very big incentives, some of them. Forget about only, how much money they make and stuff, but some of the, even lawyers, again, I don't know if a Tohan Rabbani and a lawyer is completely not in the same ballpark. They can very much be in the same ballpark, but they sometimes have, they get their money and stuff, that they have incentives. They will not allow peace. Otherwise, they have to drop the case, and then the person says, I want my lawyer, I trust them, okay, I'm not going to make peace. So, I mean, they do hundreds of cases like this, and it causes a lot of broken families and stuff. Now, I'm not saying that was the reason of the broken family, but it's unfair.
It doesn't help. It doesn't help. Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
I had another interesting shvara, another interesting idea. Why did Rav Nachman think, and Rav Yochanan, that they could tell them this twist and turn? Because he thought he's a relative, so he's allowed to get involved. Maybe the Toyin will say, I'm allowed to get involved. Since I'm getting so much money, it becomes my case. I have an involvement here. I can't just do it in my own will, but it becomes a job. It becomes my involvement. Anyways, bottom line, like I was discussing it with Rabbi Bressman, you can't say that it's prohibited. Something which is done and what was practiced for many years, you can't say that it's prohibited, or else a court wouldn't let it. But definitely, it seems that it's not the way to go, and better not to have it, and better just to go naked before the Beis Din. But you can't take away people's rights unless you do it for both sides. May God bless us all that we all listen to the Dintera in a matter of finding out what does God want us to do. And
Rabbi,
peace by Jews. Yes, please, Rabbi Moshe.
If someone were to go to Beis Din, can they make even if this Beis Din allowed for toyanim, could they make a request that the other party not be able to have?
So if that Beis Din is of the opinion that having a toyin is a right, then you can't demand it.
Uh-huh.
It depends what that Bezdin rules. That Bezdin may rule we can't take away his right. It's a right to do. If you don't pass him like the Rambam and Rabbeinu Yoina, you could do it.
Got it. But you can select the base din that will not permit it, for example.
Here goes the whole big discussion. How do you come to a Bezdin? So the most cases today, no two sides agree to one Bezdin, normally. There are cases, but normally each side chooses a rabbi, and the two rabbis choose a third rabbi, and then they decide what they want to do. They could decide no Tayanim, like they do today, but they have to decide it across the board. You could request it. I think Dintayas without Tayanim goes smoother. The people are more agreeable to give in and compromise and work something workable out. Whereas you have Tayanim, it becomes a bitter, bitter battle.
I was told that Moshe Feinstein did not allow Tonim in his when he would do Din Torahs. The only devil's advocate is, I think, that people argue today with, on a piece and an argument type of case. Okay, Tonim are probably not going to help at all, make things worse. But what if it's a very complicated legality issue, hundreds of pages, and honestly, most regular people, they're going to speak and just, they won't know how to present the case properly. And you need an absolute professional to just save time for the Dayanim. Although I don't know if that's exactly what the Alter Rebbe maybe was even referring to. That's what I said in the beginning. Can there possibly be some cases which are the complexity of the modern world today, where not necessarily exist in times of Alter Rebbe, and maybe we don't even represent them as a morsha, more just explaining complex.
Clarify things for the Bezdin.
I don't know. Perhaps. I mean,
I think that then they could have a lawyer come for both sides and explain the matter to the three Rabbonim. That's not a toyin. That's just like the Rabbonim could go to a professional to explain them how certain difficult cases work. What's the medical reason? What happened? They could talk to doctors. They could talk to lawyers. I think that's not an issue, because then you have someone who's clarifying what happened. If the Rabbanim have questions, and that's not a problem. They're not telling them what to say. They're just helping the Rabbanim understand what the person said, what he meant, what happened. Anyways, God bless you all. It's wonderful that you're learning Chesed Mishpat.
One more thing. Sorry.
Yes.
I don't know if you remember, but you used to, maybe you still do, have me as in your phone as the Jew from Pasadena. You
got yourself a beautiful beard.
Yeah, Baruch Hashem.
Moshe. Where are you now?
Pico, at Rabbi Bresman Shul.
Rabbi Levin's Shul.
The shul that Rabbi Bresman goes to as well.
Yeah.
Nice, so nice to hear you and see you. Okay.
Thank you so much, Rabbi.
Pleasure. It was all mine. Rabbi Bresman says jump. I ask how high. Take care, guys.
We only have good news, and may Hashem bring back the Sanhedrin and the Mishpatim as it was originally, and should be for peaceful needs.
Amen. Take care.
Thank you. All right, I'm thinking maybe we'll continue. We'll just, before we finish, we'll just go over one or two points to the end of the whatever I was planning to do here for today. I'm sorry, just let me figure out how I get back the video. Okay, let me share screen one more time, and then we'll just do one or two more things and finish up. So that was a very interesting point that Rabbi Cohen mentioned. It's seemingly very popular today to have no toanim. That seems to be the, and I think when I say popular, I think the reason is simple, because people see the pitfalls of, make it bigger. They see the pitfalls of having tonim and the complications, and it just drags the case on. So therefore they seem to be more against it these days. And like I was just mentioning that Rabbi Rees, in a sefer called Kanfei Yonah, he mentions that they prefer that if it's possible to have a lawyer and not a Tohen Rabbani, only because if you don't allow a lawyer, someone could say that the Beis Din went against the one of the basic rights that a person has was the right to counsel. It doesn't say you have to have necessary. I mean, so you can't deny them that right. So it's not that the Beis Din says we want lawyers. We think that they're just tzaddikim. No, not necessarily at all. But if they would both come with no lawyers, Adarav, maybe that'd be much better. But if they say I'm coming with my lawyer and the Beis Din says no, we don't allow, the Beis Din could get in trouble afterwards. Just that the case will be, if it's brought to court, the court will say, what, they didn't allow a lawyer? Well, this is an invalid judgment. So they allow it, but they prefer to limit it only to lawyers. And if both sides will not come with any lawyers, it's better. Okay. Anyways, I just finish off in 2 more points. So in 28 and 29, I'm skipping 27, 28 and 29, it talks about how you have to be honest even when it will cost you. For example, one may not make a false or dishonest claim in order to vindicate oneself or save their money in dispute. The source of the Alter Rebbe is from the Rambam at the end of the laws of Toan V'Nitan. And it basically, now, it also is Halacha 10, Halacha 10, which I'm not bringing, but I'll just quote for you what it says in Halacha 9. And this is basically what it says in subsection 28. It is forbidden for a person to lodge a false claim to distort a judgment or prevent its execution, what is implied. This is all from Rambam. If a person was owed a mana is like a certain Aramaic currency, usually in about 100, a certain value of 100 type of currency, by a colleague. He may not lodge a claim against him for 200 zuz, which is double the amount of how much he knows is entitled to him. He can't make a false claim of 200 so that he will admit owing the mana and be obligated to take an oath. In other words, you can't say, well, if I, there's rules about how when you make a claim against someone, if they deny the whole thing or they admit partially, so then they have to make an oath. Basically, a person cannot use, if they know the halachic legal system, to try to lie in order to get to the end result, which is how much they really are owed. Because you have to be truthful all the way through. Even if the tactics of being truthful, you won't be able to get out of the other person because there's a lack of evidence or there's a lack of witnesses or something. The Rambam then says, if a person owes a colleague a mana and the colleague claims 200 from him, he should not say, I will deny the entire amount in court so that I will not be required to take an oath and acknowledge the debt of the mana in private. I'll later on tell him in private, oh yeah, I owe this amount, whatever. But I don't want to have to swear, or I don't want to have to pay extra or something, or I'll just pay later or something, in private. You have to be honest all the way through in your din Torah, or with the Beis Din.
Is what's the relation in value between a mana and 200 zuz?
Okay, so first of all, the mana is exactly about half. It's 100 zuz, so it's half of 200 zuz, and a ksuba is 200 zuz. And if you ask me what is 200 zuz worth today, there's the opinion of Reb Chaim Nal, who was a famous Chabad posek. There's the opinion of the Chazon Ish, who was from Russia, there's the opinion of the Chazon Ish. There's the opinion of Rav Moshe Feinstein on 200 zuz and how much it's worth. So the bottom line is that maybe one time we'll actually go through that. But anyways, there's a lot of opinions on what's the exact value. I think it ranges anywhere between a few thousand to one opinion says it's 100 pounds of silver, but that's the most stringent opinion. Okay, anyways, I just want to finish off over here that the Alter Rebbe in Sif 30 talks about avoiding oaths. The Alter Rebbe urges both sides to avoid administering an oath and based on due to its severity. So it's like this. Let's say I'm able to make a person make an oath. And I put on him, I say, he has to make an oath to vindicate himself. So with this, that the person will make an oath, there are 2 people involved. There's the person who actually make the oath. That's called in Hebrew the mashpia. The nishpa. Nishpa is the person who makes the oath. And then there's the mashpia. The mashpia is the one who makes the other person have to take an oath, because I go to Beis Din and I demand that he takes an oath over a certain claim, and I have a way in, some sort of evidence to make him have to claim. He admits something, or so the Alter Rebbe says, yes, it's possible that according to the halachic structure, many cases you would be able to make someone make an oath to vindicate himself. But the Alter Rebbe says, try to avoid it. Do yourself a tremendous favor and try to avoid it. Not only that you should not make an oath, try not to cause that someone else has to make an oath because of your claim against them. That's what the Alter Rebbe says in 30. The Alter Rebbe brings a pasuk, Shuas Hashem tia bein shnehem. An oath will be between both of them. So the Alter Rebbe says that, what do we see from here? Why does it say that the oath will be between both of them? We learn from here that even though only one person's making an oath, the one who caused that person make an oath with his claim against him is as if he is also involved in this oath. And we know that oaths are serious things. You know, you hold a Torah scroll and you say, I swear by Hashem's Torah that I'm such and such. So even though only one person swore, the person claiming against him is involved in this oath as well. As it says, an oath will be between both of them. And the Alter Rebbe brings a scary saying at the end of it. He says that when people are saying, yeah, let's go through with this oath, we want to make the oath. So the people say, Suruna me'ala anashim harashoyim me'ela, why we find by Korah, where they say, turn away now from the tents of these wicked men. So you see from here that, we had recent Parshas Korah, that, wicked, you're causing someone to make an oath, it's already something to do with wickedness. So it's a severe issue. It's interesting to note that if you go to Batei Din maybe a few hundred years ago, you still be doing oaths under the cases which require them. Maybe, I don't know exactly what point it stopped, but already today it's very rare, if at all, any Beis Din, at least a knowledgeable one, usually Beis Dins are knowledgeable. Today Beis Dins don't make oaths. There's a Chassam Sofer in his Chuvas in Choshen Mishpat. He's very cautious of one swearing, even when they're telling the absolute truth. And that became the general standard minhag custom today, not to make oaths. So what do they do instead? Maybe we'll share that for another time. I once heard, though, that in some Batei Din in Bnei Brak, some of the fine Beis Dins there, they will say, okay, let's use a lie detector. And they will, there's different types of lie detectors. There's the ones that you put, the cheap ones you can buy on Amazon, but then they have the very professional ones where they put it around your arms and around your leg and on your forehead, and you're geared up and you look like you're going into outer space right now with those lie detectors, the fancy ones they have. So the Beis Din sometimes, at least I know that some Batei Din in Israel will demand that the other side, that if they wanted them to use a lie detector. Does that mean that halacha mandates lie detectors? No. But is Beis Din allowed to use a tool which could be helpful to them? Yes. Does it mean if the person fails the lie detector that automatically that they are lying? They don't necessarily say that, but they will use it in a series of considerations for them to make a rule. And usually when you go to a Beis Din, they also make you sign a contract of what the rules and regulations of the Din Torah will be. Sometimes they'll say, we are not going to obligate that our ruling has to go according to the strict letter of the law. We might be willing to exercise what's called pshara. Pshara is like a form of alternative compromise or something, where the Beis Din says, well, although we believe that it could be that you up to $1 million, will you both settle for whatever, 500,000, whatever it may be. Now, sometimes they can only suggest it, and in some contracts, if you what the Beis Din will say is, we have the right to make a compromise ruling if we feel that that's what's fit. And they could also consider the lie detector as part of their considerations. And they can also write in the thing that we have the right to use lie detectors if we want. So I'm just saying different Beis Dins have different rules and customs that they might use. Interestingly, since it's so severe about not making oaths, swearing falsely, this includes if you have to go to a secular court. If you have to go to a secular court to testify, so usually they have a Bible or something, and they say, do you solemnly swear? I don't remember. I think one time I had to testify in court. I was a witness over, my father got injured. Well, Hashem, he recovered, but he got, Baruch Hashem, was a miracle that he survived, and today he's Hashem. But I had to testify in court what I saw. And I think I remember such a, it will make you hold a Bible, or it depends on what religion you follow, they'll hold the Bible of your choice. So halachically, you should try to avoid that. Not try, you should. And there are legal other options. You can do what's called an affidavit. You can look that up. It's usually some sort of a written statement where you're testifying that it's true without the need of an oath. So if you don't know about that, you're going to have to swear. And so better, we even truthful swears or oaths we try to avoid. All right, that's for subsection 30. So I would advise that everybody continue learning onwards, and we'll be having a test, Be'ezus Hashem, not this Sunday.